All right, so my name's Dave. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I was asked by a good friend of mine to share a message of experience, strength, and hope for some of you guys that may either be in treatment or detox or just have a little bit of difficulty getting to a meeting with the current environment. Um, so I guess the first thing I got to do anytime I share my story in the treatment center, I have to thank everybody for being there because you'll do more for me for sitting in those chairs than I'll ever do for you with anything I can share tonight. And I always used to hear people say things like that when I was in my treatment center, and I couldn't understand what they were talking about. I was barely listening half the time, so why would they be thanking me for sitting in the meeting or sitting in those chairs? And I get it today because without you guys where you're at, I don't have a purpose, and without a purpose, I'm sticking a needle in my arm or a drink up to my lips. So I appreciate that in more ways than you know, and I'm definitely grateful for the opportunity. Um, Typically they want us to share what happened or what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I don't normally spend a ton of time talking about what it was like, and not that I don't want to revisit that or anything like that. I don't mind at all. I'm an open book, but all I know is when I was new in recovery and I was in my treatment center, and people used to bring meetings in, my disease would alienate me from everything I ever heard. He was too old. He was too young. She's a woman. They never been through what I've been through, and it basically all boiled down to if you have my problems, you feel like I feel and drank like I drank. And the book calls that being terminally unique, but essentially I couldn't relate to anybody. And I'd always compare instead of identify. So I'll spend a little bit of time just telling you where I came from, but the majority of what I talk about tonight, and what I think a newcomer might be attracted to, is what God and Alcoholics Anonymous has done in my life for the past 8.5 years. Not what I did out there in my disease, because we all know what that looks like. We might have been at different dope holes or different park benches or different bar stools, but I think all of us, knows what that part of this looks like. So what you might not have been exposed to yet is what Alcoholics Anonymous and a God of your understanding can open your eyes to. So, or open my eyes to. Um, my last drinking drug, December 1st, 2011. I was sleeping under a bridge, eating out of a trash can, and been homeless for about 7 months. And I was pretty much resigned to the fact that I would probably die with a needle in my arm. I was 24 years old, spiritually, mentally, emotionally bankrupt, and I guess I was at that place where, um, I was too scared to do anything to change my current environment because I was in my safety zone. And it was like I wanted to quit drinking and drugging, but I didn't know how, and I was scared to do anything different. And I'd been down that road so many times. I'd been to treatment multiple times, detox multiple times. Nothing seemed to work. I always took my own will back and did what Dave wanted to do. So I was kind of resigned to, like, this is the end of the road for me. And and then I got arrested December 1st, and it was different from the jump this time because I'd been arrested 10 or 15 times prior, and I never felt grateful sitting in the back of a cop car, and this time I did. And I never felt a sense of relief sitting in the back of a cop car either, and this time I did. I remember sitting back there and thinking, thank God, I get a break from myself for however short of a time it might be. Um, but it might be enough. Um, so I went to jail and I started doing strange things in there, like things I'd heard in AA meetings or treatment centers, the last couple that I'd been to. Because I had what they call the gift of desperation. I tried every other option that was available to me, and so these suggestions that sober alcoholics had made to me over the last 10 or 15 years seemed like the only viable option. So I did gratitude lists. Even though I couldn't think of many things to be grateful for, I could always think of something, even in a jail cell. So I wrote it down. And, I would pray to a God I didn't understand. every morning and every night. And, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, but looking back on it, I was acting my way into better thinking. My whole life, I always wanted I wanted someone to explain how something was going to work in my life. And before I would take any action. And Alcoholics Anonymous, the tough part about it is we don't do that. We tell you to take the action and then reap the rewards later. You know, my whole life, I wanted to get the reward and then I would do the work. And life doesn't work that way. I don't get the degree and then go to school. I don't get the paycheck and then start working. I got to take the action before I reap any tangible benefit. So, and I started doing that in jail because I had nothing else better to do, I guess. And it started working in spite of myself. And then I did something even crazier. About a month into it, they said they offered me time served, and I told my public defender, I said, no, I don't want it. I don't want to go back to the same hell I was living. And I requested a treat. I said, "Do you think you can get me a treatment center?" And she said, I'll do what I can do. I'll try to get you in drug court, and then we'll ask for some help." And that happened. So I went to Miss Farnell's court, drug court. I guess about 8 years ago now, and I got a treatment center. They gave me the opportunity to go to Goodwill, and I always call it an opportunity. I'm very careful about my words there. I never call it a sentence. I was in there with a lot of people that called it a sentence. And if you're in a treatment center or a detox now, you're probably in there with people who got different points of view, who call it different things, who might be moving in a different direction, and that's okay. They can only live their journey, and you can only live yours, and I can only live mine. And it was an opportunity for me, not because of the building. It wasn't the four walls that I was surrounded by. It was the momentum that I created while I was in there. And I go back and I tell my story at treatment centers and detoxes pretty often. And I always think it's ironic because some people will get out of these places and they'll say, "Man, thank God that I had the opportunity to go through something like that." And then some people will get out and say, "Man, I hated that place." It's the same building. The difference is those that were grateful, it's what they did with their time while they were in there. And I'm grateful that I got the opportunity to go to that treatment center. Um, when I got there, again, I had that gift of desperation, so I did anything they told me to do. If they would have told me to climb up onto the roof and do a flip off of it onto the blacktop, or jump in front of a moving vehicle, and that would get me sober, I would have done it. I would have done anything they told me to do. And I asked for help for the first time in that treatment center. I remember the first meeting I went to. I still had you only show up there with what you bring into jail. And at the time when I got arrested, I was at a low. I had one pair of clothes, and that's what I was wearing. And they didn't wash them for you while you were in jail, so I had to put that same pair of clothes on when I got out of jail and walk into my treatment center. So I probably stunk to high hell. And if I took those clothes off, they probably would have stood straight up. They were stiff as a board. I've been wearing them for probably 2-3 weeks at the time. And so I went in there, and it was humbling, and I was embarrassed, and I went to my first meeting. And looking back on it, this was definitely God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, because I went into that first meeting and I raised my hand. And I never did that in meetings. I was always a passenger. I never got involved in any of the stuff. So I raised my hand and I said, "My name is Dave. I'm an alcoholic, and I have no clue what I'm doing, and I need help because I don't want to die." And I'm pretty sure I said it exactly like that. I'd never done anything like that before. And I didn't do it because I was, brave or courageous, or really thought it would do anything. Like, it was God doing it for me. I had no intentions of doing that when I walked in. It was just right after they brought the topic up. I knew I had to do something. And guess what happened after I asked for help? People actually helped me. Go figure. They gave me clothes. They showed me what was working in their life. They gave me a big book. And I'm not talking about the counselors. I'm talking about the other people in the treatment center. And I opened up to the counselors too, and I did their treatment plans, and I took all of the suggestions that were given to me. And I'll tell you my first spiritual awakening, and when I actually realized that something was working in my life. So I had that gift of desperation. I'd been in the treatment center a month or two, so I had about 6 months clean at this point. And as I said, I was taking all of their suggestions, but I wasn't getting things back as quickly as I wanted to, because we want what we want when we want it. And I still didn't have any family in my life. I had no communication with anybody outside of that treatment center. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a job. I didn't have all the stuff back that I thought I would get being sober. And so I was resentful, and I was going to these AA meetings every day, and there was people coming in there talking about a different way of life and how their lives were so great, and they were so grateful, and they had this peace of mind and this relationship with something greater than them. And I wanted that, and I was taking all of these suggestions, and I didn't have it. And so I was resentful, and I started to, get back into that old mindset. If you have my problems, you'd feel like I feel and drink like I drank, and maybe this stuff works for you, but I'm different. It's just not going to work for me. That's how I felt. And it was as simple as this. I woke up one day and I had 6 months clean. And when we talk about a spiritual awakening, and we talk about that a lot in AA meetings, that scares a lot of people, because they think it's going to be the hand of God reaching out of the sky and touching them, or a lightning bolt, or a burning bush, or something like that. My first spiritual experience was just waking up and I had 6 months clean. And I realized that I was so selfish and self-centered that I was sitting in the middle of a miracle while God was doing amazing things in my life, and I was resentful. I had 6 months clean, and I hadn't been able to put together 6 minutes in 15 years. And here I am cussing out the people in Alcoholics Anonymous and thinking I'm different than them, and resenting them because I didn't have the gifts that they have, and resenting God because I didn't have all of these things back in my life. And I'm in the middle of a miracle. Now let that sink in. How selfish and self-centered can we be? And I know a lot of you that are seeing this, you're in a detox in a treatment center, and you think you got it pretty bad. And you're sitting in the middle of, you got rescued. I got rescued. That's what I realized. My own devices brings me to street corners, sleeping under bridges, eating out of trash cans, putting needles in my arm, going to jail. Here I am getting the help I need. I'm in a treatment center. I got 6 months clean, the most time I've had in 15 years. I'm doing productive things for my sobriety, but because it doesn't look exactly how I think it should look, I'm resentful. And so I think what happened when I woke up that day with 6 months clean is I saw my own selfishness and self-centeredness, and it was almost like an out-of-body experience. And I felt, honestly, I felt a ton of remorse, like, how selfish can I be? And I think I apologized to God and said, man, I can't believe that I'm sitting in the middle of this miracle and I can't see your fingerprints all over it. And I've been resenting God, and I've been denying God. That was the funny thing. Where's this God that these AA people speak about? Because my life's not getting any better. I don't have any of these things back in my life. And they use this term in early sobriety. They say we can't see the forest through the trees. And that's exactly how I felt. I was literally, and am still literally, a walking, talking miracle. And I can't see what's going on around me because I'm so consumed by my own selfishness and self-centeredness. And that's the root of all my problems. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous taught me. It's always been about me. And at the same time, it's never been about me. If you're sitting in a treatment center or a new in recovery or a detox or something like that, you're probably there for the same reasons I came in. I wanted to get out of my own pain and uncomfortability. I had really selfish motives participating in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't want to help anybody out. I didn't want to make the world a better place. I didn't want to do any of that corny stuff they talked about. The only thing that I wanted was to get out of my own pain and uncomfortability and make my life a little bit better. Once I learned how to do that, I would say, see you later to all this AA stuff and go on about my merry way. And God had other plans because, again, it was never about me. I thought I was coming in to restore myself, and part of it was that. But what God was actually doing was preparing me to take this message out into the rest of the world and share experience, strength, and hope with other people that needed it. And that's a pretty powerful thing. My sponsor always talks about how, God takes the bottom of the barrel, and that's me. I'm not saying it's you, but that's me. He takes the bottom of the barrel, he cleans us up, and he makes us more effective than we've ever been at making the world a better place and being impactful in other people's lives and being a service. And it's crazy, man, because AA has taken all of the reasons that I hated myself, all the lies, the cheating, and the theft, and from the world around me, and it's taken those things, and those are the things that have made me more effective to other people who are in that situation, and it's just an unbelievable program and way of life to be a part of. And I got introduced to that in that treatment center. So I had that spiritual experience, and honestly, I've taken that feeling with me for the past 8 years. You don't ever have to put that down. And I guess my message would be, if you're in a treatment center, you've already got the gift. Like, you don't have to wait as long as I did to realize that God's already doing something in your life. I always thought that I was coming into Alcoholics Anonymous to get more of something, or to get more stuff, or to get on some level that I wasn't yet on. And the catch-22 about Alcoholics Anonymous and this journey I've been on for the last 8.5 years, and life in general, I guess, is we're not in it to get any more than we already have. I had the gift when I was sitting in the back of the cop car 8.5 years ago. I've just spent the last 8.5 years learning how to appreciate that gift. So if you're sitting in a seat in a treatment center like I was, my message to you would be, you've already been rescued. All right, you can stop fighting it, and you can stop looking at this point. You already got everything that you need. Now spend the rest of your time figuring out how you're going to give it back to the rest of the world. If you can get out of your own way for long enough to see that, you'll be light years ahead of most folks in your situation. So that's something that I always want to call out every time I get the opportunity to do one of these things. So I left that treatment center. I did something else pretty crazy. I went to a halfway house, and I didn't do what was comfortable. I don't think I could have moved back in with family if I wanted to, but I didn't do that. I didn't go back to my old neighborhood. I didn't do what was comfortable and convenient like I always did. I took the suggestions from people who had done this before me, and I went to this halfway house. And I worked for my sobriety in that halfway house. And I don't mean to take credit for anything that happened, because it was definitely the grace of God. But, I did go above and beyond for my sobriety. I took 2 buses to work every single day. I took 2 buses home every single day. I walked to a meeting every single day. I called my sponsor every single day. And because I still had that gift of desperation, I knew how bad it could get real quickly. In a short period of time if I wasn't diligent about this stuff. So I did all of those things. And again, I'm selfish and self-centered. I wasn't able to do that because I'm any more hardworking or spiritual or intelligent than anybody else. It's just because I had something bigger and better than me working in my life, and I'm forever grateful for that. But so I did all of those things. They asked for a 6-month commitment. I did 8. And I felt good about that. I did what I said I was going to do, and I was responsible and accountable to others. And I paid all my bills a week early, and I showed up to work early, and I went to a meeting every day. And these are all new habits for me that I was trying to institute, because I was trying to be somebody that I wasn't able to be in my disease. And I was grateful for the opportunity that God had given me. And my sponsor made sure that I knew that I had a responsibility to display that to the rest of the world. So whether it was paying a bill early, showing up to work on time, or going to a meeting like I was supposed to, I wasn't to minimize that, and we have a tendency to do that. We make like a series of small concessions, and we call it small stuff when it's actually really big stuff. And, Alcoholics Anonymous and my sponsor taught me how to live life as a sober, responsible man. So it's bigger than we make it oftentimes. And that halfway house was huge for me, because I learned how to live like a sober, responsible man without someone holding my hand. So I recommend that to anybody in the treatment center. It was awesome for me. Um, another thing Alcoholics Anonymous taught me is to be of service, and when I am of service, I got to do it without an expectation attached to it, and that's tough. And I went through one experience in particular that really reinforced that thought, and I want to share that with you guys. So when I moved out of this halfway house, again, I was trying to be of service. I was trying to stay plugged into the recovery circle. So there was this guy I was in this treatment center with, and he was, and he was in his 50s. He was an ex-convict. He'd done about 30 years in prison. He was out on parole, and he went directly from prison to the treatment center, and now he was getting out, and he was going to do. He did the halfway house with me, and now he was getting ready to move out on his own. And when you're on parole, it's tough. It's tough to get residence, and if he couldn't get residence, he would actually violate parole and go back to prison. So I figured I'd do the right thing and let him stay at my place for a short period of time until he could get on his feet. Well, as it usually does, a short period of time turned into 6 months, 9 months, a year. And I think I can share about this because this individual is no longer with us, so I don't think I'm breaking his anonymity. His name was Dave, just like me, and he was plugged in for a while. He was plugged in with a God of his understanding. He was going to meetings, and somewhere along the line when he was staying at my place with me, I met a woman who I started dating, and eventually we'd get engaged, and I'm still married to her today. But it was, and she actually ended up moving in with us too. So it was kind of an interesting dynamic. I had to explain to her things like why all of my friends were in work release, why I lived with a 50-year-old ex-convict, and she was a normie. So it was probably, she's a saint, and I'm probably lucky that she ever stuck it out with me. But um, it was an interesting dynamic. It was he was always kind of a fifth wheel, but he was a good guy. And so somewhere along the way, he, unbeknownst to me, he started drinking. His meeting started slacking off. He started drinking, and he started doing some somewhat shady stuff. He started stealing out of my wife's purse. He started stealing from my house. He lost his job, so I'm paying his bills. I'm putting food on the table, and he's stealing stuff from our household. And you know, I was conflicted because if I kick him out, he's on parole. He's going to go back to prison for a long time if he doesn't have a residence. And so I shared some of this stuff with my home group and with Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm getting around to the point of this whole thing. I shared it with my home group, and people would tell me, Dave, you don't have to be a doormat. You don't have to allow this individual to steal from you. Kick him out of your house. He's jeopardizing your peace of mind and your serenity. You're wasting your time, effort, and energy on him. Why don't you get him out of there? These are people in AA telling me this. My sponsor gave me some of the most valuable advice during this time. And, it ties into the, being of service and doing things with no expectations attached. Now, this doesn't have to be for you, but this is my experience and this is my story, and this was valuable to me. He told me, Dave, you gave away everything for alcohol and drugs. You threw your time away. All your effort, your energy went towards getting your next fix. You gave away everything that was ever important to you. You don't deserve any of that because you gave it away for alcohol and drugs. Now you get rescued. You get given an opportunity that you didn't deserve. And now you think you can tell God where you need to spend your time, effort, and energy. You think he's taking advantage of you? Don't you believe God's put you in this situation and you got an opportunity to give somebody else what you never gave the world your entire life? He said, maybe this is your opportunity to pay back a world whose face you always spit in, whose time, effort, and energy you always took advantage of, whose kindness you took for weakness every time they tried to reach out to you. Maybe this is your opportunity to make an amends you'll never have an opportunity to make. And then he said, When you're of service, you don't do it with an expectation attached. You're not you're not letting this guy stay with you so that he stays sober and does everything you want him to do. You're doing it because that's the person you want to be. So you do that regardless of what he does with it. That's your responsibility. You know, and that's exactly what I did when he gave me that talk. It was humbling, and I realized that I don't get to make the decision on what I do with God's gift anymore. That's why I'm doing this tonight. It's a global pandemic. People are freaking out. We don't know what to do. We can't, there's no meetings going on. It's tough to be of service. How do we carry a message of experience, strength, and hope? So when I get asked to do something like this, I do it because I don't get to make the decision where God decides to use the gift that He's given me. So I let him stay with me while he stole from me. I continued to put food on his plate, and I continued to be an ear and share a message of experience, strength, and hope if he needed it. I tried to be a good example. And he didn't accept it at that time, and he eventually ended up stealing something at a Walmart or something and getting arrested, violating parole, and going back to prison. And so while he was in prison, even though he stole from me and my wife and my household and all of that, I'd put money on his books. Every week or a couple times a month, me and my sponsor, some members of the home group, we'd put money on his books and help him out. And the reason we did that is we wanted him to know that we were a part of something that was bigger than our personalities. No matter what he did, we were going to be there for him. Alcoholics Anonymous was going to be there for him, and a God of his understanding was going to continue to work in his life. And we tried to be as accurate of a representation of those things as we could be. And so that's why we continued to do that. And he got closer to God in prison, and he started going to AA meetings again in prison. And then he got stage 4 cancer and died in prison. And it was like short. It was like, one month he was here, next month he wasn't. And, even though that's kind of a disheartening thing to share, I think it was important for me because it was the first relationship that I was a part of that I saw through from start to finish, and I was there for, regardless of what they did for me, or regardless if they gave it back in return. I actually stood for something. I actually still have some of his stuff in my garage now. While he was in prison, he asked me to hold on to, some clothes and some books he'd written and things like that for when he got out. And I did that, and I was there for him, and I still took his calls and put money on his books, and we rekindled our relationship. And it felt good to be able to do that, and Alcoholics Anonymous and the God of my understanding gave me the opportunity to walk through that situation and not turn my back like I would normally, and most people in the world would. So yeah, I mean, since that point, I married that woman who I was with, and God's done a lot of amazing things in my life since then. And I got a beautiful daughter. She's 2.5 years old, and she's a genius. And life is good, man. Like my message to the newcomer, you hear all the time, early sobriety sucks. You're gonna white knuckle it. You just just don't get drunk, and that's good enough. And that's not my experience. I was able to get out of my own way pretty early on, and I haven't been consumed by the thought of a drink or a drug for the last 8 years. Hand to God, I don't think about it anymore. It doesn't mean I don't take my will back. It doesn't mean I've done sobriety perfectly for the last 8.5 years, but it does mean that spiritual awakening that I had in that treatment center, and that that grace and that consistency that I could take with me through that situation with Dave. I don't have to allow the world to take that from me, even in a global pandemic. Even when things are different and we're adjusting to the new normal, even when I'm telling my story on a computer screen, and even through whatever you're going through sitting at home or in that treatment center, I don't have to sacrifice the gift that God's given me for anything. And guess what? Nobody can take that away from me. I can give it away if I choose to, if I allow it to happen, But if I'm diligent about this stuff and I take action and I do what I learned to do in that treatment center every single day, I can keep it and I can give it to others at the same time. You know what's changed for me since I left the treatment center and the halfway house? Nothing. I always tell people that when I go to these treatment centers, they always talk about, I'm going to get out into the real world and that's when the real test is. And that's a bunch of BS. Nothing's changed for me since I left my treatment center. I was diligent about this then. I'm diligent about it now. I recognize the gift I had then. I still got the same gift now. That's my message for you. Even if you're sitting at home or in a treatment center, it doesn't matter. You've already got the gift. Same gift I had from the minute I was in the back of that cop car. You can stop looking for it. Okay? You can stop trying to get it. You've already got it. You've already been rescued. God's already said that you're worth it. Now, what are you going to do with it? Speaking of not working my sobriety perfectly, I got one more experience I want to share with you because I think it's important for the newcomer. We get a sponsor. We work steps in this program. They call it the 12 steps, and really what they are, I always thought they were a homework assignment. Write some stuff in a journal, read some stuff in a book. That's actually not what they are. They're a design for living. All right, they're an instruction manual for how to live life happy, joyous, and free. And they got this one that's the 4th step. And essentially what that is you got to take an inventory, all the people you've harmed, all the resentment you have towards people, places, and things, and you got to share it with someone else. And that's pretty intimidating. All right, and I hear all the time people going out because they were unable to do their 4th step. And so I did a 4th step. I kind of half-assed it early on. I told my sponsor what I thought he wanted to hear, and I coasted on that for a couple of years. But I had one secret that I didn't want to share with anybody, and that's that I had hepatitis C from IV drug use. I learned that in my treatment center. And my biggest fear at the time was I'd been dating this woman, and we were engaged, and she was my fiance, and we were soon to be married. And I hadn't yet told her that I had this Hep C because I had this huge fear that she was going to leave me, she wouldn't accept me, she wouldn't want me if she knew that. And I wouldn't even share it at meetings. I didn't tell my sponsor. And looking back on it, it's kind of stupid because I've learned since then that like 90% of the people in AA meetings are IV drug users that have or have had that disease at some point. But I was really scared of it at the time. And so God did something with that. He, I had a sponsee brother who was sponsored by the same guy as me. And he asked me, he said, I'm going to share my 4th step with Bob, and I want you to be there. And that's weird because people don't do that. It's hard enough to share it in front of one person. He wanted me to be there. So I said, all right, man, I'm game. I'll do it, whatever. So I showed up, and he spilled his guts. He got uncomfortably honest about everything. His sex relations, everything he'd ever been through, his childhood. And I think I was blushing by the end of it. He got so open and honest. And I was uncomfortable, honestly, because I had never, reached that level of honesty with my sponsor. And but I appreciated the vulnerability that he shared with me. And so I got to the end of that, and I'm like, all right, man, I gotta spill the beans on my stuff. So I told my sponsor that. I wasn't scared to tell my sponsor so much. It's just I knew what he was going to tell me to do. He was going to say, you got to go home and tell your wife, and that was really my fiance at the time, and that was really my biggest fear. And my timing's always been great my entire life. So it's her birthday, and I figured this would be the best time to tell her about this. Would be her birthday. And, that's just how it worked out. I happened to share that with my sponsor, a couple of days before her birthday. So I go home, I go, honey, there's something I got to tell you. I pull her outside and I say, I got Hep C and I'm ready for it. Our relationship's going to be over. She's going to leave me. And of course she does break down crying, right off the bat. But she doesn't leave me. In fact, what she starts doing is researching Hep C cures for the next 6 hours online and, bringing up things I should do for it every day. And, if anything, I got another champion and an advocate. She didn't leave me. And so what I realized is most of these things that I run from, I'm just making a mountain out of a molehill. And I have no clue what God's going to do with it. And God wasn't done with this yet. So not only did I not lose my fiance, But we go to this big Fort DeSoto picnic soon after that. And if you don't know what that is, there's a meeting every year in South St. Pete at Fort DeSoto Beach where alcoholics get together from all over the world and talk about sobriety and things like that. And there's a 12 o'clock meeting there. It's a huge meeting, and this meeting's going on, and I can't make the meeting. I'm down there, but there's a crowd of 300 people. I can't get through to where I can actually hear anything going on. So I say, screw it, I'm going to take a walk. But my sponsor was there. And since I'd gotten honest about my Hep C, he heard this guy named Dr. Bob, who also happened to be a recovering alcoholic, share about a free cure for Hep C that was new that he was offering to people without insurance. So Bob, my sponsor, comes running up to me. He said, Dave, you got to go talk to this guy. He just shared about a free cure for Hep C. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. But I go talk to him, and sure enough, it was legit. It was when an experimental drug had just come out. It was an $80,000 treatment that he was being subsidized to be able to offer, and I was one of the first people to get that treatment. And about 2 months later, I got cured of Hep C. God still wasn't done. Then what he allowed me to do was go to meetings and tell other recovering alcoholics and addicts that there was this treatment for Hep C, and so 8, 10, 20, 30, 40 people ended up being able to get that treatment because of something that I was able to go through. The moral of the story is, how selfish am I? Again, it's never been about me, and I never know what God's going to do with something I'm struggling with if I confront it and if I share it with Alcoholics Anonymous and address it head on. And I guess God decided that he was going to use that situation to help a lot of other people. Had I stayed locked up in fear and not shared it, none of that would have happened. So that was another pretty powerful experience. So everyone's got something they're running from. All right. My message for you is, number one, it ain't as bad as you think it is. And who are you to deny God the ability to get his hands on it and do something miraculous with it? Get it out in the open. Share about it. I guess to summarize, my life's great. I can talk about all the material and all the tangible stuff, but that's not really the biggest blessing that God and Alcoholics Anonymous has given me. I do have all of that. He's blessed me, with a lot more than I deserve. But, he's given me peace of mind and serenity, and he's given me a purpose. That's really the biggest thing that God and Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. I used to run around like a chicken with his head cut off or a dog chasing his tail, and I would repeat the same insanity over and over and over again, and I was kind of caught in this cycle, and I was just sucking air, man. I was just existing. And God and Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a purpose, and that's why I thanked you guys at the beginning of the meeting, to bring it full circle. This is my purpose now. It's not the career I have. It's not the father or the husband I am, even though that is a huge part of it. It's taking this gift that God has given me, and it's spreading it to the rest of the world, whether they understand why I'm doing it, whether they receive it well, whether they do what I think they should with it or not. It's not my call today. And the biggest thing I want to leave you with is, if you've been on if you've been watching this for 38 minutes now, you got the same gift. You already got it. Now what are you going to do with it? Thanks for letting me share.